Some engines weren't just built to run. They were built to outlive everything. Imagine driving a car for 1,000,000 miles with the same engine. No rebuild, no major repairs, just oil changes and the occasional raised eyebrow at the odometer. From the deserts of Arizona to frozen Scandinavian roads, a few legendary engines have earned a reputation for doing the impossible, surviving decades, abuse, and even neglect. Today, we're counting down the 10 most indestructible car engines ever made. Engines that mechanics respect, drivers trust, and time forgot to kill. Let's start with one that's been through it all and still runs like it's fresh off the lot. Toyota 22 RRE, the unkillable workhorse. If reliability ever had a shrine, this engine would sit at its center, oil-stained, dust-covered, and still running like it was built yesterday. Toyota introduced this 2.4-liter inline-4 in the early 1980s, and it quickly became the beating heart of the Hilux and 4Runner. From Central America's muddy back roads to the icy tundras of Scandinavia, this engine wasn't just common, it was trusted. Its reputation wasn't earned in labs or marketing brochures. It was earned one brutal mile at a time. The 22 RRE is what happens when engineers prioritize toughness over everything else. Cast iron block, forged crankshaft, timing chain instead of belt, simple electronic fuel injection. Nothing fancy, nothing fragile, just a straightforward design that could be repaired with hand tools in a tent, under a tree, or on the side of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And people did exactly that. There are stories and plenty of photos of these engines surviving incredible abuse. Engines that were accidentally submerged in rivers, drained of oil, overheated in the desert, or even rolled in wrecks, and still started up with a fresh spark plug and some duct tape. In off-road circles, it's not uncommon to hear someone say, "Yeah, it's just a 22R. It'll be fine," before setting off into terrain that would make modern engines cry. This wasn't a performance engine. It wasn't built to race. It wasn't flashy. But it was the kind of engine you could bet your life on. Some owners have clocked over 500,000 miles with little more than routine oil changes. Others still daily drive 22R-powered pickups that were built before they were born. Ask any old-school Toyota mechanic about the 22 RRE and you'll usually get the same answer. They don't make them like that anymore. And they don't. But now let's shift from Toyota's surgical reliability to a brawny American engine that made its name in the fields, job sites, and highways of the working class. Ford 4.9-liter inline-6. Some engines are made for performance, others are made for prestige, but this one, it was made to work. This engine, better known to loyal drivers as the 300, was the kind of engine that didn't need to prove itself. It just kept showing up. From the early 1960s through the mid-1990s, it powered F-Series trucks, Econoline vans, and even some industrial equipment. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't fast, but it was loyal, like a steel-hearted farmhand that never took a sick day. What made it so legendary? Simplicity. This engine was carbureted in its early years, then transitioned to fuel injection in the 80s. It had a cast iron block and head, forged internals, and virtually no complicated electronics. Everything was overbuilt. Everything was accessible. Mechanics loved it because it was easy to diagnose, easy to repair, and almost impossible to kill. Need torque? This thing pulled like a freight train at low RPMs. Need endurance? It was common for these engines to clock 300,000 miles with no major rebuild. Need it to run with a cracked exhaust manifold or a leaky valve cover? It would, and it wouldn't complain. Ask any old-school contractor, rancher, or delivery driver, and chances are they either owned one or desperately wanted to. These engines powered decades of small-town America, surviving freezing winters, scorching summers, and more overloading than any spec sheet would recommend. And even now, decades after the last one rolled off the line, you'll still find them idling smoothly at job sites, hauling lumber, or just sitting in a field somewhere. Because while trends changed and new engines came and went, the Ford 300 stayed the same, slow, strong, and utterly unshakable. Coming up next, one engine that helped define American car culture and became the beating heart of everything from muscle cars to street rods. Chevrolet small block, American icon with 8 cylinders. This isn't just an engine, it's a cultural monument. Debuting in 1955, this engine became the heart and soul of American performance, dominating everything from Corvette racetracks to Main Street drag strips, and it never really left. In fact, variations of this block continued production into the early 2000s, a nearly 50-year reign of mechanical dominance. The most famous version? The 350 cubic inch small block. It was everything a gearhead could dream of, simple to work on, easy to modify, and practically indestructible if maintained even slightly. It wasn't just a favorite of hot rodders and weekend warriors, it was a favorite of anyone who wanted cheap horsepower and bulletproof reliability in one iron cast package. Chevy's design was genius in its simplicity, a basic but beautiful layout that allowed parts interchangeability across generations. And thanks to the massive aftermarket, you could build one from scratch using nothing but catalog parts, or rebuild one from a junkyard with a few $100 and some elbow grease. Plenty of these engines were workhorses. Dropped into Suburbans, CK trucks, Caprices, and RVs. They towed boats, hauled bricks, hit 200,000 miles, then did it again. Even today, mechanics often say, if the engine bay can fit a small block, it's getting one. It became the go-to swap for classic builds, race cars, farm trucks, and anything in between, because everyone knew once a Chevy 350 is in there, reliability isn't a question, it's a guarantee. So whether you grew up around muscle cars, square-body trucks, or dirt track bruisers, chances are you've heard the rumble of a Chevy small block. And that sound? That's the sound of American durability on full blast. But now, let's move from the roar of muscle to something a bit more humble, yet no less unstoppable. Chrysler Slant 6, the unstoppable underdog. This engine didn't need fame. It just needed an open road, or a gravel lot, or a farm, or even a construction site. Anywhere people demanded one thing, a motor that would never quit. The Chrysler Slant 6, particularly the 225 cubic inch version, earned its place in automotive folklore not with power, but with pure, stubborn resilience. Introduced in 1960, it stayed in production for over 4 decades. That's not just a run, that's a dynasty. And yes, it leaned. The cylinders were tilted 30 degrees to the right, which gave it the slant name. At first glance, it looked odd, but that unique design lowered the engine's profile, allowing for sleeker hoods and better engine bay airflow. But the real magic wasn't the angle. It was what was inside. Thick cast iron block, forged steel crankshaft, beefy connecting rods. This engine was overbuilt in the best way. It didn't ask for synthetic oil or high-octane fuel, just regular maintenance, and it would keep chugging like a tractor on a mission. In fact, many Slant 6s became legends not because of how well they were treated, but how badly they were abused. There are real-world stories of these engines running with broken timing chains, half their spark plugs missing, or after being parked in a field for 15 years. With fresh fuel and a battery, they'd cough to life like nothing happened. It powered Darts, Valiants, pickup trucks, and even delivery vans. It wasn't fast, but it was faithful. If the V8 was the star quarterback, the Slant 6 was the offensive lineman who never missed a snap. And even now, decades later, mechanics still talk about them with a kind of quiet reverence. Because the Slant 6 didn't chase performance, it chased immortality. Next up, we're shifting gears from Detroit's muscle to German precision. Meet the European engine that blended refinement with unstoppable longevity. BMW M30. Before BMW was known for touchscreen overload and turbocharged complexity, it had something simpler, something sturdier, something that refused to quit, no matter how many Autobahn miles you threw at it. That engine was the BMW M30, a 3.0 to 3.5-liter inline-six that quietly earned its reputation as one of the most reliable European engines ever made. Produced from 1968 to 1994, it powered some of BMW's most iconic cars, the 5 Series, 6 Series, 7 Series, and even a few Alpinas. It wasn't the loudest or the fastest, but it was the one that just wouldn't die. The M30 was smooth, torquey, and surprisingly simple for a European luxury engine. It had a single overhead camshaft, rock-solid construction, and a conservative design that valued balance over bravado. And while newer BMWs might make headlines for their twin turbos and tight service intervals, the M30 keeps making headlines for one thing: still running. With basic upkeep, oil changes, valve adjustments, and an eye on cooling, it wasn't rare to see these engines push beyond 300,000 miles. In fact, some BMW enthusiasts joke that the M30 doesn't break down. It just takes naps until someone gives it fresh fluids. It became known as the Big Six, a nickname that underscored its blend of brawn and refinement. Whether cruising effortlessly at 120 miles per hour on the Autobahn or hauling through back roads in an old 733i, it delivered quiet power with silky confidence. No drama, no warning lights, just that distinctive BMW hum that promised everything was under control. The M30 wasn't just a reliable engine, it was a cornerstone, the foundation for BMW's future inline sixes and the DNA behind some of the brand's finest engineering. Okay, now we're moving from Bavarian precision to bulletproof diesel. Let's meet the million-mile monster that turned Mercedes taxis into time travelers. Mercedes-Benz OM617, the million-mile diesel. This engine didn't whisper luxury. It shouted longevity in 5-cylinder diesel rhythm. The Mercedes-Benz OM617 is one of the few engines in history that truly earned the phrase million-mile motor. Built between 1974 and 1991, this 3.0-liter inline-5 diesel was so over-engineered that it practically became immortal. And for a certain generation, this was the engine that built Mercedes' global reputation for engineering excellence. At first glance, it didn't look like much. Cast iron block, cast iron head, chain-driven single overhead camshaft, no fancy turbos in early versions, no direct injection, just raw industrial strength, tuned for one job: survival. The OM617 found its way into cars like the W123 and W126 series, sedans, wagons, and even the iconic 300D. It was especially beloved by taxi drivers across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, where engines were pushed to the edge of sanity and still came back asking for more. In some cities, you'd see fleets of diesel Mercs with 600,000 plus miles on the odometer, still in daily service, still purring like granite in motion. What made it so special? It could run on bad fuel. It didn't mind long idles. It was slow, yes, but unstoppable. Even the turbocharged versions in later years were built to last, not to impress. This was the engine that took abuse with elegance. One driver famously crossed North America, clocking over 900,000 miles, with nothing more than regular oil changes and a valve adjustment here and there. Another used it to set multiple land speed records in a diesel-powered concept car, because why not? In today's world of planned obsolescence and electronic overkill, the OM617 stands tall. No check engine lights, no sensors to betray you. Just a deep diesel growl and a quiet promise: I'm not done yet. Next up, we go from the diesel tank to a high-revving modern marvel that tuners and daily drivers both worship: Honda K20. Precision, balance, endurance. That's what the Honda K20 stands for, and why it's earned a place in the Hall of Fame for engines that just won't quit. Launched in the early 2000s, this 2.0-liter inline-4 wasn't just another compact engine. It was a masterclass in smart engineering. Found in the Civic Type R, Acura RSX, Accord Euro R, and other Honda models, the K20 quickly became a legend in both performance circles and commuter garages. Why? Because it did everything. It revved like a motorcycle, with redlines often touching 8,000 RPM. It delivered silky smooth power across the band, thanks to Honda's ingenious IV-Tech system. And more than anything, it lasted, like 200,000 plus miles without drama. Ask any Honda enthusiast and they'll tell you, the K20 doesn't just survive, it thrives, even when modded, even when abused, even when pushed to its mechanical limits on the track or in rush hour traffic. What's truly impressive is how bulletproof this engine is despite its high-strung nature. Most high-revving performance engines wear out quickly or demand constant maintenance, not the K20. With regular oil changes and basic care, it can clock mileage that most turbocharged engines can only dream of, without a single check engine light. Tuners love it because it's responsive, mod-friendly, and nearly impossible to break. Daily drivers love it because it's quiet, smooth, and fuel-efficient. It walks a tightrope between excitement and efficiency with surgeon-like control. You'll find K20s still running strong in 20-year-old Civics, in weekend autocross builds, in slammed street cars that should have died years ago. And yet, they keep pulling. It's not just a four-cylinder. It's a statement Honda knew how to build something that danced at redline and lived to do it again the next morning. Now, let's turn up the boost and head into the world of Japanese turbo legends. Meet the engine that drifters can't kill and tuners can't quit. Nissan SR20DET, the street legend. You can rev it, boost it, beat it, and somehow it still asks for more. That's the legacy of the Nissan SR20DE and SR20DET, the turbocharged inline-4 that became a rite of passage for car enthusiasts from Tokyo to California. This 2.0-liter twin-cam powerhouse first appeared in the late 1980s and quickly found its way into legendary platforms like the Nissan Silvia, S13, S14, S15, 180SX, Pulsar GTI-R, and more. What made it special wasn't just its performance. It was the fact that it could take punishment like a heavyweight boxer and still keep swinging. Built with forged components in many versions, an iron block, and strong oiling and cooling systems, the SR20DET was more than just tuner-friendly. It was tuner-proof. While plenty of engines cry under boost, the SR20 welcomed it like a challenge. Mod it, drift it, daily it, run it hard. And if you gave it just basic maintenance, you'd easily get 200,000 plus miles even under the heavy right foot of a teenager in a sideways S13. But even the naturally aspirated SR20DE earned respect. Found in vehicles like the Nissan Sentra, SER, and Primera, it still delivered solid performance and bulletproof longevity without a turbocharger in sight. Ask any Nissan tech and they'll tell you the SR20 is a survivor. Not because it was treated gently, but because it was built to take abuse. And in car culture, that means something. It became the heart of grassroots drifting, the soul of street racing scenes, and the unsung hero in budget builds that beat out cars twice their price. And here's the kicker. Even with beat-up valve covers, mismatched coil packs, and turbos that should have been replaced years ago, SR20s still fire up. They idle a little rough, they hiss and whine, but they run. And now, Let's talk about the engine that became the crown jewel of Japanese performance. Toyota 2JZ GTE. There are reliable engines, and then there's Toyota's 3.0-liter twin-turbo inline-six that became a mechanical myth. Born in the golden era of Japanese performance, this engine's powered the legendary Toyota Supra MK4, and from the moment it hit the streets, it was clear this engine wasn't playing around. With its iron block, forged internals, and overbuilt bottom end, it was designed to handle more power than the factory ever gave it. But here's what blew people's minds. This engine could handle over 1,000 horsepower on stock internals. No rebuild, no exotic parts, just boost, tuning, and bravery. Tuners couldn't believe it. Street racers couldn't break it. And decades later, the 2JZ is still considered the gold standard of JDM durability. Even in its factory form, the 2JZ GTE delivered around 276 to 320 horsepower, depending on the market. But with basic mods and a larger turbo, it could easily double that. And it would still run smoothly past 300,000 miles, assuming you kept up on oil changes and didn't bounce off the rev limiter every day. But what makes the 2JZ truly legendary isn't just the power, it's the confidence. The engine feels like it wants you to push it, like it knows it's stronger than you are, like it's been sitting patiently, waiting for you to turn up the boost and finally give it a challenge. That's why it's become the centerpiece of countless drag builds, drift cars, street monsters, and even engine swaps into other brands. When someone says it's got a 2JZ, they're not just talking about an engine. They're announcing that reliability and ridiculous horsepower are about to shake hands. And as we near the end of our list, there's still one engine left, one that might not get the spotlight but has quietly outlived nearly every other motor on the planet. Volvo B230, the Swedish champion of longevity. No flashy sound, no turbo hiss, no track day trophies, just hundreds of thousands of miles and a quiet refusal to die. The Volvo B230 is the kind of engine that never makes headlines because it's too busy outliving them. Found in the legendary Volvo 240 and 740 series, this 2.3-liter inline-4 might be the most underrated survivor in automotive history. What makes it so tough? Simplicity, low-stress design, and a level of mechanical restraint that borders on genius. The B230 wasn't designed for power. It was designed for permanence. With a red block cast iron structure, thick internals, and low compression, the engine practically idles its way through life. It doesn't run hot. It doesn't strain. It just goes. Owners regularly report 500,000 miles and beyond, with the original engine still ticking like a metronome. And it's not because the engine was babied. These cars lived through icy Scandinavian winters, poorly maintained roads, and decades of family road trips, often with minimal maintenance. Timing belt, easy to change. Fuel injection, simple and robust. Electronics, almost none to worry about. This was Volvo engineering at its most practical. Build it strong, keep it simple, and make sure it never becomes a problem. There's a reason why in some rural areas and cold countries, you'll still see boxy old 740 starting up in the dead of winter while newer cars sit silent. The B230 doesn't care about age, it cares about function. And the most amazing part? Even today, you can find these engines running on original parts. Never opened, never rebuilt, just oiled and respected. It's not the fastest, it's not the prettiest, but in a world obsessed with upgrades and replacements, the B230 stands tall as proof that true quality doesn't need applause. It just needs time. These 10 engines aren't just slabs of metal and moving parts. They're stories, survivors, icons. So now it's your turn. What's the longest running engine you've ever owned? Or the one car that just wouldn't quit no matter how badly you treated it? Drop your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe, and check out our other video, which can help you save thousands on repairs.